Hey guys, good morning. Welcome to the JeepSolid Garage. I'm so glad you're here. So today we're going to be taking a look at the use of Plastigage. Rattlesnakes!
Don't drop it.
Stop! Actually had this for a... So here I have my 6-cylinder engine out of my 1992 Jeep Wrangler YJ, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to follow along on this rebuild. This has been a really fun project. Appreciate having you guys here, appreciate all the comments, it's been a lot of fun. So hit that subscribe button to kind of see how this rebuild goes. But today we're just covering the use of Plastigage. We have our bearings all installed into this, and I got to drop the crank in here real quick. So then we can use our Plastigage and check our clearances to make sure we have proper oil clearance around the crank. Now, Plastigage comes in a variety of sizes. There's green, red, and blue. And the different colors are for measuring different sizes of clearance. The green is for 1 to 3 thousandths, red is for 2 to 6 thousandths, and blue is for 4 to 9 thousandths. Now you want to use the Plastigage that's closest to the clearance that you need. So for example, on this project, the clearance I'm looking for is 1 thousandths to 2.5 thousandths. So that's why I'm using the green Plastigage, because remember this is 1 to 3 thousandths. So this is like the perfect Plastigage to use on this project. Now we're going to be setting the crank in here dry. You want to be really careful. I'll probably mention this again because it's how I am. We're going to be setting the crank in here dry, and you want to make sure you don't rotate it at all. You don't want dry on dry and movement. That's just a bad combination. So let's drop the crank in here real quick and we'll get started. Here's our crankshaft, so we'll just set this down in here very gently. Where are we at? And of course we have the final cleaning of the engine done. The crankshaft has been cleaned. The journals on it were machined at the shop, so it's all ready to go. My bearings are set out. So we're going to take our Plastigage here, open this up, and we're going to lay, there's 7 main journals along here, and we need to check the clearance of all those. So we're going to open this up and cut little strips to place on each of these 7 journals. Make sure we got a nice clean piece to start with. So you can see here it's just a real fine fiber there. That's what we're going to be using. And we're going to cut 7 strips that are just long enough to fit on the journals. Alright, we got all our bits of Plastigage on there. Now we can start dropping our bearing caps onto these guys, starting with journal number 1. These are all labeled. And yeah, like I said earlier, we're doing this dry. When you're using Plastigage, you have to do it dry. You can't use assembly lube. Bearing number 2. So you have to be just very careful about not rotating your crankshaft, rubbing metal on metal dry anywhere. Bearing number 3 with the thrust bearing on it. And we are going to go through the whole torquing sequence on these guys. And just to check our oil clearance. Now, of course, on a rebuild like this, the oil clearance is super important, because you don't want to run into a situation of doing a rebuild like this and put everything together without checking your clearances, and then something's too tight and you just end up burning a bearing up and wrecking your rebuild. Okay, now we're going to go through the torquing sequence on these guys, because we got our Plastigage in there, our bearings and caps on there. So now we got the way the Plastigage works is, so it's this little fiber that's designed to spread out essentially when you squish it down, then you take, there's a little gauge on the packaging here, and then you measure it up. I'll show you how to do this. You measure it up at the end with how much it's squished, and that tells you your clearance. Now obviously oil clearance around these bearings is super important on a rebuild like this. So let me double check our caps here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are all perfect. And I think I have the orientation right. Let me double check that. So the first thing, we've got our caps all in place here. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna run these bolts. We're gonna run these bolts down just finger tight, but we don't want them to be dry. We want some oil on these guys. But the bearings themselves, with the Plastigage, have to be dry. We'll use our engine assembly lube when we're done with our clearance measurement here. But for now, let's just oil these guys up and get them finger tight. Of course, we've chased all these threads, cleaned them up real good, so we're ready to go here. Okay, now we're going to go through the torquing sequence just like we would on our final assembly, although this is just checking our clearance. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to set my torque wrench here to 30 foot-pounds. And we are going to start in the center and work out. Okay, we got those guys all done at 30. Now we're going to go up to 50. And same thing, we're going to start in the center and work our way out. All right, now our final torque sequence, 80 foot-pounds. There we go, done. So like I said, that squishes down this Plastigage, flattens it out. So now we're going to use the little gauge on here. And there's two sides of it. One side is metric, one side is standard. We are going to be using this, the side with inches on it, so don't confuse yourself with that. So now we can go through and take these caps off and check our clearances. All right, let's take our caps off here. The moment of truth, and yeah, to be honest, I'd be lying if I didn't say, I'm a little nervous. I sure hope my clearances are okay. Because that would be just, oh. Have my clearances be off. New bearings, back to machine shop. Just set back. All right, the moment of truth. Let's measure these clearances. And so you can see this side is inches. Right here we have 1 thousandths. Here's 1.5 thousandths, 2 and 3 thousandths. And you can kind of see how the 3 thousandths, it's a little narrower than these others. That's how it's measured. So if it squishes out farther, then you have a lower clearance. So it looks like I am just at my maximum clearance here. So we're a little bit over the 3 thousandths. So we're probably at that 2.5. So I think we're okay, but just at the top end of it here. So that's good. Checks out. And then when you're all done, you can just take a rag and wipe off the Plastigage. So there we go. If we're going through all the trouble on this rebuild, you want to do things right, you got to check your clearances. So that's how you use Plastigage. Be sure to leave a comment down below. Check out some of my favorite tools, my Patreon page, all that's linked in the description below. I think that's it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. And now you want to use the plastic glage.